Hey, college football fans, it's week 7, and I thought we'd take a little bit of time and talk about the Pac-12 as we go into play this week. All right, so one of the reasons why I chose to look at the Pac-12 first is because they've made a lot of changes to the way the Pac-12 champion is going to be crowned this year. You can read all about it down here. I've included the source. This is basically right off the Pac-12 homepage. But back in May, they announced that it's no longer going to be the two division leaders that play for the championship game. It's going to be the two teams that have the best overall conference record, regardless of what division they're in. The North and South divisions have remained intact, but that's really just to maintain the scheduling that's there. And if we look over here at George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, he basically says that this was their goal, that they wanted to get the two best teams into the Pac-12 championship game. I think he accomplishes that. And you wanted to optimize the CFP invitations and ultimately win a national championship. I really don't think he helps himself in this way. And here's why, just quickly. I mean, you don't really move up in the polls unless somebody above you loses. That's a fact of life, right? And here's the problem. So from this game, if it's this game in isolation, the only way somebody moves up in the poll is if your lower seed upsets your upper seed, right? And they're not going to come, more than likely, they're not going to come all the way to the position of the upper seed. I mean, maybe if you've got like a 6 playing 8, then 8 will become 6 and 6 may become 8 or 9. Maybe, but in general, you're probably talking, a 4 or 5 ranking point spread. So say it's like 5 playing 10. Well, if 10 beats 5, what's going to happen is 10 will move up to say 6 or 7, and 5 is going to go down to 7 or 8. So overall, you've lost position if you're really trying to get a team into that CFP game. Now, going to the expanded format will definitely help and get them in there. But the same thing's going to happen out on the bubble at 12, right? So I don't see it happening there really. If you really want to get your teams into the CFP, your best bet is to not have a championship game and try to schedule something very competitive in against another conference and knock somebody out who's above you. But in that case, you run the risk of losing that game too, and you're then the other conference is going to have an edge. But it's a risk reward. I say you got to risk it for the biscuit. But playing your own internal championship game is a neutral effect for your top seed. And if you're looking at it from the conference, if the lower seed wins, which happens often, it's probably a net negative for your overall conference. All right. So how would these changes really affect, play? Well, looking at it historically, this was who would have played in the prior years, or who did play in prior years, and this is who would have played. And you can see about half the time there was no change, right? But now I will say some of their other goals were that they wanted to increase fan interest and media value of their actual football championship game. I think this accomplishes that in general for the Pac-12. So kudos for them for making the change. And overall, I'm in favor of it. I just don't think you accomplish this. You're just not going to help your CFP bid with this game. I don't think any conference really does. Okay, looking at it now from the standings and how this is going to affect us this year, you can definitely see that the Pac-12 standings, the South Conference, is really stacked this year, right? This is where the real strength of the Pac-12 is. You can see that 3 teams are rated, 2 teams are undefeated, and this is where a lot of competition is happening. And this is a very exciting conference to be watching right now. On the north side, you've got Oregon kind of standing out by themselves. What are they playing for? They're playing for the chance to go to Allegiant Stadium on December 2nd. They get there by playing through a 9-game conference schedule. 5 of them are in their division, and 4 of them are across the division. Right? And when you get through that, the two teams with the best record will play on December 2nd. So who's going to play? Well, the most obvious path is to look at who's undefeated at this point. These teams have played up to 3 conference games, so they still got a lot of conference schedule to go. But we can really look at their schedule and how things line up. So when I look at USC, even though they're 4-0 in the conference, their wins just are not that impressive. And when I look at their overall conference, perhaps they've got the easiest conference schedule out there. But really, I'm looking at this and saying, I think USC is overrated. I don't think they really deserve this number 7 slot. And I really think that UCLA will go undefeated. I'll say that right now. So I think they're going to get a loss here against UCLA. And I got a scenario that I'm going to talk about through Utah when we get on to the next slide. All right, so UCLA, I see them going undefeated. I was impressed with them. They've already got good wins over Washington and Utah. I think they find a way after this bye to beat Oregon, and they just run their way through the remainder of the table. Oregon, just the inverse of what I said. I just am not feeling it for the Oregon Ducks. I grew up in the Northwest, so I'm really biased towards them. But I think UCLA beats them. And again, let's talk about the Utah scenario on the other slide. But coming off of this slide, my prediction is that UCLA goes undefeated and gets the number 1 seed in the Pac-12. All right, for the number 2 seed, we got to look at like who the other 1-loss options are going to be. Here's what I see happening. I'm still pro Utah, and again, I'll have to admit, I've lived in Utah. I've got some bias here, but Utah has been so close in their other ranked matchups against Florida and UCLA. Really, these have basically been 1-possession games. In the case of Florida, it was a last 30-second interception from the 10-yard line where they could have kicked a field goal to tie the game, but just took one more shot into the end zone and it just didn't pan out. That's how close it was, right? UCLA, the game was within a touchdown the entire way, and it was only when Utah started taking a lot of risks in the second half of the fourth quarter that this lead got extended. And that I think, Utah has been right there, and it just kind of been on the wrong side of it. I think playing away had a lot to do with that, and they probably would have gotten a couple of breaks in their direction if they were playing home. Well, guess what? This week, USC's playing Utah in Salt Lake City. And I don't think Utah is as good as their record, as their ranking shows, and their record is not that impressive of a win record to be out there. I think Utah finds a way to beat USC at home. All right. Likewise, I look at this Oregon game. I think with everything on the line, Utah finds a way to get past that 1 possession. And this is my pure bias coming out. I admit it. It's all my opinion in that. But Oregon loses to Utah. And as a result, Utah goes in as the number 2 seed with a 1-loss Pac-12 record, and everybody else has got at least 2 losses. California is in the conversation, but look at who they have to play. I see California getting 2, probably 3 more losses in their Pac-12 schedule. So it's really just where they sit right now, and in about 3 weeks, they're not in the conversation at all. All right, so in our Pac-12 championship game, I've already said it. Utah gets the number 2 seed. UCLA gets the number 1 seed. Unfortunately, like I said, my Utah bias coming out. UCLA is going to do the same thing to Utah that they did in their regular season matchup. I think UCLA wins this by a touchdown. And I think, unfortunately for UCLA, even if they go undefeated, they're going to suffer in the rankings, because if my scenario plays out, Utah will have already beat number 7 USC. And so when UCLA plays them, they just won't get the advantage of having gotten that top 10 win. At best, I think UCLA comes in at number 5. More than likely, they finish number 6 and they miss out on the CFP entirely. And like I said, in this Pac-12 championship game, will have done nothing to really help them climb that pole to get in there. All right, there you have it. There's my predictions for the overall Pac-12. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to watching the Pac-12 after dark One of the things I love about living out west is watching those late night games. I hope you enjoy college football as much as I do. Please subscribe, and we'll talk to you on Monday with the results from week 7.